My Lords, I strongly welcome this debate and congratulate Lord Greaves. And like my noble friend who's just spoken, I have been an ardent pro-railway supporter all my adult life. But it is precisely for that reason that I do not support HS2, because I think the sheer cost of it will suck the very lifeblood out of the rest of the country's rail system. Originally in government, I, along with my colleagues, took the default position in favour of basically anything with an engine at the beginning of it, a guard's van at the back, and a lot of sleek carriages planned in between. But I must say, I think that the Labour front bench is now right to have become more sceptical of the project. I'm not going to dwell on how we reached the decision as a government, but frankly there was too much of the argument that if everyone else has got a high-speed train, we should have one too, regardless of need, regardless of costs, and regardless of alternatives. And as a party, to be frank, we didn't feel like being trumped by the zeal of the then opposition's support for the high-speed train. We wanted, if anything, to upstage them. Now, since then, I've had a lot of time to think about this decision and to face the fact that actually no empirical case has been established for HS2, despite the repeated attempts that have been made to make such a case. The so-called business case, the original business case, when the justification for HS2 was all about speed, duly collapsed under scrutiny when it was discovered that in real life people do actually work on trains, sometimes better even than when they're in the office. Now the whole justification has shifted to assumptions about increased overall capacity, reduced crowding, and the economic benefits to a handful of the nation's cities, none of which, I might say, have been authoritatively quantified as assumptions or academically or otherwise verified. They all depend on forward projections of passenger loads which are uncertain, famously unreliable, and greatly affected by the future price of tickets and elasticity of demand. What has been forgotten in all this debate is that in 2006, the then Labour government asked Rod Eddington to undertake one of the most comprehensive studies ever of transport in the UK. And this study, after a great deal of very thorough examination, firmly rejected HS2. Eddington concluded that Britain's transport infrastructure needs would be much better met by a wide range of incremental improvements rather than a few high-profile extravagances. He ended with one very important, in my view, very important point of wisdom, and I quote, "The risk is that transport policy can become the pursuit of icons." And I fear that HS2 has become precisely that, a political trophy project justified on flimsy evidence as being about modernity and prosperity, with, I might say, a lot of pressure being put on those conducting the cost-benefit analysis to come up with the answer that ministers want. Even so, I would be prepared to put up with a lot of the uncertainties of the case if I thought that HS2 stood a reasonable chance of rebalancing, helping to rebalance the UK economy, of lifting regional growth and creating jobs outside London and the South East. But there is absolutely no conclusive evidence that any such thing will happen. It might give some short-term boost to those cities on the line of route. But equally, the easier you make it to get to London, the more people are likely to end up working and living in London. And the readier access to facilities that you provide, the facilities of the capital, the greater likelihood it is of facilities in provincial cities being undermined. It's not surprising, therefore, that KPMG, on closer examination of their research, as the BBC did last week, have found some very patchy results indeed for the benefits of HS2 for the regions. More places stand to lose than gain from HS2. And that's hardly surprising. £50 billion on HS2 is £50 billion, or anything like it for that matter, that won't be spent on upgrading the East Coast main line that serves Humberside, Teesside and the North East, or on lines to Bristol and the South West, or to East Anglia, or importantly, on the links between cities outside London. And this, I think, is something on which we need to focus. Having represented a constituency myself in the North, and now having the privilege to serve as the High Steward of Kingston upon Hull, I know the difficulties people have in using public transport, not just between conurbations outside London, but into and out of any northern city, or getting to a job within any extended travel to work area outside London when depending on public transport. There are literally dozens of rail and public transport projects urgently needed across the country that would make a very significant economic and social impact, all of which and more could be extracted for the price tag of HS2. One last word, my lords, on the, if I may, one last word, if I may, on the capacity arguments that it is claimed will be magically solved by HS2. Rail demand may increase substantially, or it may not. But we know that if HS2 goes ahead, its economic case, the one put forward, if I may, I'll continue, because, well, okay, I'll give way, but I mean,
well, I think it's
time with the rest of the debate.
Well, it's a question of clarification of what the noble lord has just said. Does he think it's the normal part of cost-benefit analysis on a project to say that you count against it? If it doesn't go to Cambridge, that is a cost to the project. Is that the noble lord's view of how cost-benefit analysis is normally done?
Yes, of course, it's part of it. But the point is this, my lords. The government's own economic case, if HS2 goes ahead, has made clear that this will involve nearly £8 billion worth of cuts to existing intercity services. That means, for example, Coventry services to London will be cut from 3 to 2 per hour, Stoke 2 to 1 per hour, Stockport 3 to 1 per hour, Wilmslow, all intercity services to London axed, and I'm just about to conclude, and journey times from Oxenholme, Penrith and Carlisle to London will be lengthened. So much for the capacity case for HS2. If this goes ahead, we will see a shrinking of rail network in this country, and that should be the very last thing that pro-rail supporters in this House should want to see.